Aloha and good morning. I would like to call the Planning and the Economy Committee to order. I would like to welcome the following members who are present in the council chambers: Committee Vice Chair Cordero and Council Members Okimoto, Say, and I understand Council Member Wire will be coming a little late. Pursuant to Act 220, Session Laws of Hawaii 2021, in order to allow public participation in a manner consistent with safe COVID-19 practices, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony remotely or in person in the council chamber on all items on the agenda when each item is taken up. All persons who register to testify in person will be called upon first, followed by those who register to testify remotely. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the registered testifiers. Before testifying, each person shall state their name and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. Act 220 requires all votes at a remote meeting to be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside of the council chamber under Act 220, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audio-visual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we reestablish contact. Therefore, please announce beforehand if you will be voluntarily signing out of the meeting. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones. I'd also like to welcome Council Chair Tommy Waters to this briefing. Moving to agenda item number 1, update on the allocation and use of American Rescue Plan Act fiscal recovery funds. Just as a reminder to all the members, the city was awarded $386 million in American Rescue Plan Act state and local fiscal recovery funds. The administration approved the projects for the first tranche, $193 million, and the approved projects can be seen in the monthly ARPA reports transmitted via mayor's message communications. The council appropriated second tranche of $193 million, as well as a list of projects and estimated costs in Appendix A of Ordinance 22-14, the city's capital improvement budget for fiscal 23. I think the robust conversation that we had during Tuesday's budget committee meeting is a reflection of the need for us to continue to get updates from the administration and ARPA FRF fund projects, particularly as decisions are made on the council members' projects in Appendix A, and as we head closer towards the spending deadline for these funds. Mahalo to Deputy Managing Director Krishna Jayaram for joining us today.
Good morning, Chair Kiana, Vice Chair Cordero, Council Chair Waters, and Council Members. Krishna Jayaram, Deputy Managing Director. And I apologize, we did have a presentation. Should I just read through it here, or will we have it on the screen?
I think it would be good to have it on the screen for the general public.
Good morning, council members. So this presentation this morning will cover the SLFRF in general, and we'll cover the update as well. And we have scheduled meetings with all of the new council members to give them one-on-one briefings as well, so we could answer questions. I apologize if we haven't been able to meet with everybody just yet, but those have all been scheduled at this point. So, Chair Kiana, as you mentioned, I'll focus somewhat on the second tranche because that's key right now. But the second tranche was in Bill 15 of the CIP budget from last year. That's where the City Council expressed, based on its constituents' input, expressed its intent in terms of how those monies should be spent. So for discussion topics today, I'll cover the FRF funds itself. I will describe the ad hoc committee and its work. We'll have a discussion of Tranche 2, current status, what we're doing in terms of reporting, as well as ongoing efforts and challenges that we face that we'd like the City Council to be aware of. And by all means, council members, if there's questions along, I'll leave that to the chair to decide, but I will go through my presentation. As the committee chair noted, Tranche 1 was received in June 2021, $193 million. In June 2022, another $193 million. These were federal funds that were given to states and local municipalities to help us in our response to the COVID situation. There are some current critical deadlines with respect to these funds. They have to be obligated by the end of calendar year 24, and they have to be expended by the end of calendar year 26. We have heard that there's a possibility some of these deadlines may shift based on how states and municipalities are doing, but that will be a federal government decision. And so for right now, we're operating on the assumption that these deadlines are hard and fast, and so that's what we're moving off of. Earlier this summer, we submitted to the U.S. Treasury a 2022 recovery plan, which identifies objectives and which identifies priorities for our execution. So this is a yearly requirement that we have to update Treasury on the status of how we're doing as a community, how we've been spending the money, and where we see this going. So this will be something that we will be coming and doing on a yearly basis, working with council. Copies of all of these are available on our website, and I can certainly make them available to any council member who'd like to take a look. So in the recovery plan, there are 4 goals that have been identified. Community support, addressing economic impacts, supporting equitable economic recovery, modernizing city operations, and investing in critical island infrastructure. So if you take a look at our website dashboard, all of the projects are categorized in these 4 buckets so we can see how we're doing in terms of these 4 priority areas. This is meant to be a living document, so as the situation changes in our community, this too could be changed. I will add that we also conducted community surveys, and these community surveys are meant to provide more information on these different topics. So the ad hoc committee review, and actually I'll jump forward a little bit before I go back to the ad hoc committee. So we have Bill 15, and Bill 15 lists a number of, and Vice Chair Cordero, I apologize, because I don't remember quite the term you used, but it identifies initiatives that we should focus on and an associated dollar amount. So what we do is we take each of those items and we assign it to a department. The department is instructed based on what's written in Bill 15, Exhibit A, to work up a proposal that looks at the eligibility, the data, that they should go out and engage with the community and figure out how best to execute on what's in Bill 15. That proposal is brought to this ad hoc committee where it's reviewed and I'll speak to that ad hoc committee in a second. So the committee reviews it, makes sure that it's legal, that it meets procurement needs, that it's workable within the time frame, and then it goes to once it's approved, then it goes through our standard government processes. We have to go through procurement. We have to go through HR if it's a hiring provision. These are different from the monies that we originally received from the federal government in that we absolutely had to follow procurement. We have to follow federal procurement. So it is not as simple to use these funds as it was to use CARES Act monies. The project then is managed by both the department as well as the administration to make sure that the money is being spent as intended. We have reporting requirements, and then we have monitoring requirements. So this is the review committee. This is the departmental proposal. The departments come in. We feel it's a fairly rigorous system. I am happy to share our proposal template with the committee if that would be helpful to look at.
Sure.
And then the review committee. These are the items that goes into the funding request, the proposal that's submitted to the review committee. It deals with what is the problem being addressed, the solution being proposed, the evidence. What will the problem look like in the future? What KPIs should be used? Is there non-FRF funding that can be used for this purpose? Because we are mindful that there's a limited amount of money, and we want to make sure that other sources of funding are explored and made sure that those are not available to us before we hit this particular bucket. The current status, so we've received $386 million. As of January 10th, $254 million have been approved for use. From the second bucket in particular, it's roughly $93 million has been approved for use. This slide shows some of the significant projects out of the second bucket that have been approved. $5 million for development of city housing, money for a Chinatown task force, $2 million for a death benefits program for non-female eligible COFA. So this is just a listing of some of the projects that have been approved to the next stage. In terms of the reporting that we currently undertake, every time the committee approves a second tranche project, it is reported to the City Council that following week. We also provide a monthly line item and Appendix A status report to Council. And finally, we do have a quarterly and annual reporting requirement to U.S. Treasury. This reporting framework has been a work in progress. We have received feedback from Council along the way that they'd like to see more of X or less of Y, or we'd like to have it in this format, and we're always open to reporting in a way that's more helpful to the City Council. So if after we have this discussion, if there's more changes that you'd like to see in the reporting, by all means, please let us know. We'll make that happen. Continuing into the fiscal year, these funds were meant to be flex funds, meaning that we want to be able to pivot as the situation changes. As the chair of the committee noted, I think the council had a very important and meaningful discussion earlier this week about the $33 million for RURP. And that's the kind of discussion that should and needs to be done in public. And that's extraordinarily helpful as we figure out how we use these funds. I will note that our ability to execute these projects is something that we're very keenly aware of. The use of these FRF monies is on top of what all of our departments are doing in their normal course, and they're doing it with enthusiasm. They're doing their very best to provide projects that make a lot of sense and that are good and meaningful and lead to long-term change. But from an operational perspective, I will share that generally speaking, fewer larger projects are easier for us to execute than having a lot of very small projects. That is challenging for us. It does not mean we're not going to do it, but I just want to share this with the City Council for your general awareness. And with that, council members, open for questions and discussions, whatever may be helpful to you. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Members, does anyone have any questions? Councilmember Shea?
Deputy MD, my basic question is the presentation you made in regards to the review committee. Can you walk me through on page 9? Do you folks have something that is a timeline for each of these pockets? You know what I'm saying? Department of Proposals, how long would that take? Approval Review Committee, how long would that take? Procurement, which is a big one, how long that would take, so that we know and the general public knows what the process is as far as the timeline that you folks have to go through as the administration.
Thank you, council member. That's a great question. I'll do my best to answer it in a way that's helpful. What I would share is there's various different timelines that we keep in mind. The biggest one, top of the line, is absolutely the end of calendar year 26 expenditure, end of calendar year 24 encumbrance. And with respect to that timeline, we do have goals in terms of how much of the money we want approved out to be executed by when. And right now, at least on that piece, we feel pretty comfortable. With the exception of about $5 million, all of Tranche 1 is moving forward. For Tranche 2, $93 million out of the $193 is moving forward. So in terms of that big timeline piece, we do feel fairly comfortable. We do have quarterly check-ins with all the departments on where their projects are, so we can ensure that they're moving along appropriately, and if they're not, we can figure out why not. With respect to this chart, sir, the departments preparing proposals, we have given them a deadline that they need to come back to us in this first quarter of this year to let us know exactly what's happening on the proposals that are being examined, so we know whether they're going to go or not go. With respect to the approval process, once the proposal comes in, we meet that week.
Okay.
And unless there are issues with the proposal that need to be fixed, addressed, it gets approved right away. With respect to procurement, standard government processes, BFS has set up a Tiger team that handles FRF procurement in particular, because we do recognize that these are priority items for council. So there is a Tiger team devoted to doing that, but it's still procurement. So it's hard for me to give a hard timeline in terms of how long that takes. But we do have resources devoted to making sure that FRF procurements happen sooner rather than later. And then after that, the management piece, to be honest, that depends on the complexity of the program. So for example, if it's something like the first RURP infusion of money that we made, they have done that before, so they can give a pretty good deadline as far as how quickly that goes. The death benefits project, for example, after approval, it took a lot longer than any of us hoped for, but it's a complex project to put together. So it's hard for me to give a hard timeline in terms of the procurement and the management piece.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Okimoto?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Director. Could you explain to us what qualifies as a large project versus a small project? And if you could give examples, just so my office and I can be aware.
Absolutely, council member. So I don't think there's a hard and fast definition necessarily about what's a large project versus a small project. And I don't mean that in any sort of qualitative sense. I just mean that in pure dollar amounts. So for example, when from the first tranche, we put in an additional $38 million into the RURP program, that was a large dollar project. We also have smaller projects in here. For example, I believe there's either $25,000 or $50,000 for the neighborhood commission office to improve the outreach and functioning of the neighborhood boards. So in that respect, it's just a smaller dollar amount project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Chair Waters.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair.
As you mentioned earlier, and I'm going to kind of go through this painstakingly just for the benefit of the new members. As you mentioned, in I think it was Bill 15, the budget, Section 17 requires the administration to give monthly updates to the City Council on how the ARPA money's been spent, right?
That is correct, sir.
And I appreciate that. And for the most part, you have been doing that timely. But I do want to point out that we recently received Mayor's Message number 8, right, which was dated December 29th. Well, actually, let me back up. Section 17 requires monthly updates to be provided to the council no later than the end of the month, right?
Yes, sure.
Well, I just want to point out. So we did get Mayor's Message number 8, dated December 29th. However, filed January 23rd. So it's late, but at least we got it. So I appreciate that very much.
Chair, if I might, it was filed on the 23rd with your office?
With the city clerk.
I'm sorry, it was filed with the city clerk on the 23rd?
Yeah.
Let me look into that. I mean, it was prepared in a timely fashion. I'm a little bit, I will look into that.
Okay, and I'm happy to give you a copy if you need one. But what has been helpful is that you put these updates also on the city's website, oneoahu.org, right?
I apologize, Chair. I was just taking notes.
What's equally helpful, and for the new members, on oneoahu.org, which is the city's website, which updates the public on the use of the ARPA funds.
Correct. We do maintain a dashboard that should list these new projects as they come live.
Right, which I appreciate very much. And if you look at the website, there is, as you mentioned, 4 buckets that the city has been spending the ARPA money on, right?
Correct, Chair.
Yeah. One is support an equitable recovery and economic development. Second is provide community support and address economic impacts. The third is to modernize city operations. And the fourth is to invest in critical island infrastructure, right? The 4 buckets, which were outlined in the recovery plan that the city sent to the Treasury Department, right?
Correct, Chair.
And then in each one of these buckets, you outlined for the public what money has been spent, or excuse me, you divide it into 3 categories. I believe approved, encumbered, and expended, right?
That's correct, Chair. We worked with the City Council. You expressed that you want it to be sort of more understandable, more easy to follow.
Exactly, and I appreciate that very much. So when you say approved, if you could just explain what that means. That means the SLRF committee has gone through the vetting process and has approved that amount, correct?
Yes, Chair, thank you. So the concept was taken, used by department, developed by department, went through the FLF process, vetting process, and has been approved. Correct, Chair?
Okay, and as you mentioned in your testimony, the committee has approved $254 million, and on your website, $254,341,531.
Chair, I haven't looked at the dashboard today, but I will take your word for that if that's what it says today.
I guess I'm just being exact, but you did say 254 million, which is fine. And then encumbered, what does encumbered mean?
Encumbered means that it is, there's an obligation that's been put in place. So for example, there's a contract in place, or there's, the funds have been locked in a sense.
Okay, under the website, it says that 29 million has been encumbered. And 79 million has been expended.
Chair, I believe that we've worked very hard on getting those data points to be to date. So if that's what the current numbers say.
And just using layman's terms, expended would mean that we actually spent the money.
Absolutely, that it's actually been paid out.
Okay. So if we've approved 254 million, but expended 79 million and encumbered 29 million, there's still some play within what was approved to reprogram, correct? If the committee, SLRF committee, or the council, as an example, wanted to reprogram that money, it's still possible, yeah, because it hasn't actually been encumbered or expended.
So, Chair, that's an interesting question. We do check in with each of the departments on a monthly basis to see how much progress is being made.
Okay, and of course, you update us through the website. So let's just go through that for a second. On the 4 buckets, what stands out in support an equitable recovery and economic development, on the website, one of the first one, it says, or the second one, funding affordable housing on Oahu, approved $20 million, which is great. So the SLRF committee approved $20 million for affordable housing on Oahu, but yet it's 0 for encumbered and 0 for expended. Yeah, could you explain what's going on with funding for affordable housing on Oahu?
Of course, Chair. So I don't have the specific details on what that project necessarily is, but I can at least try to share what's going on. So as I indicated on the slide, and as I shared in response to Councilmember Say's question, once it leaves the ad hoc committee as a project that's been approved, there's still an enormous amount of work that needs to be done to get it done. And so that gap that you're seeing between what's been approved and what might be expended is a reflection of that work that needs to be done. It's not as if we approve it and then it can happen that next week or even that next month or that next quarter. There's still work that needs to be done, hard work by the departments.
Okay, appreciate that. Also within support on equitable recovery and economic development, there's it's on the website, high-level professional support, $466,380. What is that, high-level professional support? What does that mean? I mean, it sounds good, but I'm just curious what it means.
So, Chair, on the website, there should be an ability to get in deeper on each of these items, but if there isn't, you're nodding your head no, so there isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I put my cursor over it, and I wish I had my computer before me, and we could put it up on the screen so that people at home could see what I'm talking about. But, so do you know what that means, high-level professional support, $466,000?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what that item is. I can offer some guesses, but I don't want to be incorrect.
No, we don't want you to guess. Okay, how about Oahu Back to Work 3.0, $5 million?
That's an OER program that was approved fairly recently. And actually, I think they might be discussing it in the next item on the agenda. So, Chair, if there's items that cause you pause or that you want more information on, if you could give me a list, I can come back at a future hearing and provide a better explanation of each of those.
Okay, no, that would be great. And the reason I'm asking is just so the public knows.
Of course.
Right? As we mentioned before, the SLRF committee is meeting, not in public, and I'm not sure if you folks take minutes on those meetings, but moving on to the second bucket, providing community support and address economic impacts. Very top of the page on your website, relief for nonprofits, $20 million. 0 encumbered, 0 spent. Can you please explain that to the committee?
Of course. When we received the FRF monies, and some of these, Chair, I am familiar with or I remember. A lot of these I don't, so I apologize. But the ones I remember, I'll try to give you as much information as possible today. But if there are others that you're interested in, please give me a list. And if, with the committee chair's indulgence, we can have a fuller discussion. So this item that you asked about, when we got the FRF monies, there was a huge amount of feedback that we received, and I believe the City Council received from the nonprofit community that said we were impacted by COVID, that we need support to stabilize our operations. And so we worked towards developing a nonprofit relief program through DCS. So DCS has put that together. I think we announced it in December, maybe, Chair, I don't quite remember. And it's rolling out currently as we speak.
Okay, yeah, and each one of these that I'm pointing out, if you can provide the committee and the public, for that matter, more information on these.
So, Chair, if I apologize, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the high-level support was one of them. This $30 million nonprofit. The workforce development.
Yes, funding for affordable housing on Oahu, high-level professional support. I believe we're going to talk later about back to work, relief for nonprofits.
Thank you, Chair.
Oahu Business Recovery Grant Program, $10.5 million. The website shows that the $10.5 million has actually been encumbered, zero spent, but I imagine that perhaps is going to be talked about.
That will be
a little
part of
later.
OER's, I think it's
Wonderful.
part of OER's presentation, but that's another program that we heard from the business community, particularly the community that relied on wedding industry, that they were impacted during the COVID shutdown. They needed funds to stabilize their efforts. OER has put in a tremendous amount of effort, and that rolled out. We announced that last Monday.
Awesome.
Thank you, Chair.
Awesome. And then moving to the third bucket, modernizing city operations. And it looks like there's been quite a bit of work on modernizing city operations, which is great. And I think we need to do that. But within this subcategory, there is ARPA Housing and Homeless Coordinators, $284,999. What is the ARPA Housing and Homeless Coordinator?
Chair, I believe that refers to positions within the Office of Housing that we staffed up given the impacts that we foresaw with respect to the economic downturn that we're facing. But I would have to double check that and make sure that.
Okay, I mean, just what I'm learning, with the fringe benefits attached to any one of these positions, it actually adds like 150% onto.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the salary is one thing, but the fringe is a huge part of that when we use these monies. Well, when we hire anybody, but when we use these monies for FRF.
Yeah. Is this money that I believe was mentioned yesterday that the city did hire a housing and homeless coordinator? Was it Mr. Hirai?
So Mr. Hirai, Craig Hirai, who was formerly BNF director at the state, he was hired as the city's chief housing strategic advisor, and we've actually have him in DPP because of that such strong tie between the housing issue and DPP. So he's actually not in the Office of Housing. That housing position is still something we're looking for.
Oh, okay. Was that Trish LaChica's former housing director?
That's correct. The former executive director was Ms. LaChica.
Okay. And she's no longer with the city, correct?
That's correct, sir. Since last fall, I believe she's no longer with the city.
So that position's vacant?
That position is currently vacant, sir.
Lastly, Chief Strategic Communications, $600,000. What is that?
So, Chair, this is the Chief of Communications. This is Scott Humber. That reflects not just 1 year, it's a multi-year dollar amount, and it does include fringe. And it reflects, I think, our belief that it's so important for us to communicate all the good work that the City Council does, that we do, that our city employees do. And so that was the investment in that money to make sure that the public understood how we're using our ARPA monies.
Okay. And then lastly, invest in critical island infrastructure, which I appreciate very much. And I think that's modernizing city operations, investing in critical island infrastructure, and providing community support to address economic impacts. I mean, all four buckets are important, and it's super helpful to know that the city is doing these things. And then lastly, and thank you, Chair Kiana, I'm almost done. You do provide monthly updates on Appendix A, which for the new members, Appendix A reflects what the City Council members put in the budget last year, our priorities. And they're listed in the back of that communication that they give us monthly. And there are 44 projects that the City Council had identified as priorities. And what we went through the other day, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like 6 of the 44 that they're actually look like there's some progress going on with that. Are you saying that those 6 projects have amounted to $93 million? And again, on Appendix A, it looks like they're numbered 1 through 44. There's an estimated cost column, the status column, and then the project name and number. And the estimated cost, I believe, if you add up all what the council had estimated the cost to be, approximately $198 million.
Chair, if I made a mistake in my math, I apologize. Do you have a different number than I did?
No. But I guess I'll be more direct. How do you come to $93 million? I know $25 million was just appropriated for desalinization of our seawater based on the fact that we're having problems with our Red Hill and the Halava Shaft. So that's a large chunk. And I think that's what you're talking about earlier to Councilmember Okimoto's question, like bigger picture and bigger projects are probably easier to expend, like here, $25 million for clean drinking water. But could you explain to the committee what makes up the other 45 million or so?
Of course, Chair. So, and if I apologize if I made a mistake in my math. So,
No.
including the 25, the remainder of the projects, I believe, should add up to 90, but I'll take a look right now.
Well, I'm happy to see that development of city housing to service the 50% area median income and below population, $5 million is in progress, which is good. Would you mind explaining a little bit more what exactly that entails that the city's doing regarding 50% area median income and below population?
I apologize, Chair. I was looking at the numbers. You just asked me a question, sir.
Yeah, I was really happy to see that in Appendix A, Project Status Report, item number 3, development of city housing to service the 50% area median income and below population, $5 million, and it says it's in progress. Where many of the other city council priorities are in review, this one actually says in progress. So I'm excited to hear about what exactly the city's doing, because we had a lengthy conversation on Tuesday about the rental relief fund, and most of those applicants, I think it was pointed out, 87% of those applicants were of 50% AMI and below. So I'm just wondering what exactly this $5 million is being spent on, because again, we've identified that this really is a need.
Absolutely, Chair. So thank you, and thank you to Chair Kiana's Chief of Staff for providing me with the document you're looking for, or looking at. So the $5 million, that money was spent towards the Waikiki Vista acquisition.
Okay. Waikiki Vista acquisition, so that's a building in Waikiki that was formerly been a short-term rental building, I think.
So that building was formerly Tokai University's Honolulu campus. They divested it, I want to say maybe 10, 12 years ago. It had been used as sort of a short-term stay for students. It's currently being used by HPU as their dorm, and we acquired this last year.
The Waikiki Vista, that's not the one on Cartwright Road?
Chair, that's the one that we visited several months ago.
Okay.
Yes, you remember?
Yeah.
And they had this big area on
Yeah.
the bottom. Yes, that was the building.
Okay. So when in progress means
The
we haven't
Olympic
actually
Boulevard.
put anybody in that building yet.
So in
still need
progress
to
is
renovate
actually a little bit of a misnomer, because we did close on the acquisition. However, there was a lease that was in place with HPU that lasts till May. So DCS is currently in the process of working with affordable housing developers to program that space. But until May, we do not have that space for our use as the city for affordable housing.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And last question, on item number 28 on Appendix A, funding to serve the needs of vulnerable communities and those struggling individuals and organizations maintaining economic stability via the Department of Community Services and Social Services and Nonprofit Provider Network, Community Navigators, and other programs, $10 million in progress. Could you update the committee on what that means?
Of course, Chair. So this $10 million went towards a nonprofit program, which is a $30 million program that we discussed earlier, that has been set up by DCS. They're accepting applications now, and we hope to start funding nonprofits in the near future.
Okay. And again, I mean, it's good that we have this opportunity, so thank you, Chair Kiana, for having this hearing, because the community has a chance to hear exactly what the city is doing with regard to the ARPA funds, and especially as it's dealing with homelessness and affordable housing, which is a priority of both, I believe, the cities and the city council. So thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
And Chair, thank you for your questions. You know, Council Member or Committee Chair Kian has kindly scheduled OER to come in and share on their projects. There's been a previous request by the council to list out in our dashboard by department what each department is working on. So if the council would find it useful to have this sort of presentation by all departments, by all means, we want to make sure, as you do, that the community is aware of what we're doing together.
Thank you, Chair Waters. Actually, that's a good idea. I understand that in the Parks Committee, and I heard it from Director Thielen at the Waimanalo Neighborhood Board, that she fully intends on updating the Parks Committee on all of their ARPA-related funds. And I just mentioned that for all of the appropriate committee chairs for your jurisdictions. Please feel free to call in the various departments under your jurisdiction to give you an update on ARPA-related funds. And Chair Waters, because I know we don't have this very often, after Councilmember Wire and I ask our questions, you're more than free to ask some more questions while we're asking. Welcome, Councilmember Wire. Do you have any questions?
Not at this time, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Manager. Deputy Managing Director, just to clarify, because I think there's some confusion over the dollar amount that you cited with regard to $93 million being spent, because if you look at slide 3 of your presentation, it looks like the dollar amount might actually be $103 million. And I guess I just want to confirm that. If you tally up page 13, I think it comes out to $103 million. Is that correct? Because it's important for us to know how much is left. Is there 90 million left or $100 million?
So Chair Kian, with your indulgence, I'll do the math now, but let me take a quick look.
Or actually, maybe someone in your administration can help you in the back while I just move on to other questions?
Of course.
Yes, why don't I just move on? So I understand the administration has assigned all of the projects listed in Appendix A to the applicable department heads. Are there projects that have been determined to be ineligible or infeasible yet? And would we be able to get a list of those projects in the near future?
Councilmember, thank you. That's exactly what we're working on right now. So we've given the departments at this point since the end of June of last year enough time to vet and look at these projects. So we're currently compiling projects that they find may not be feasible due to some treasury regulation or some other operational issue. We're gonna check those and make sure that we agree that those issues are true issues. And then we will come back to the council with a list of those. We do intend, however, as a courtesy, when we know if a particular item was introduced by a council member, to have that discussion with that specific council member separately as well.
And when do you believe that list is going to be done?
My goal is to have it done by the end of this month.
Okay, so January 2023. In light of the spending deadline, is there a point in time where we should anticipate that all of the projects to be reviewed with the recommendation? So first, I wanted to know what will not be funded, and then second, for those that will likely be funded, what is your cutoff date for departments to provide recommendations?
So, Councilmember, also a good question. As you noted, it's a two-step process. First is the projects that are not going to move forward. The projects that are going to move forward, at least by the end of this fiscal year, we need to have them before the ad hoc committee to move them into actual operational phase. So we are giving departments time to continue vetting them, but we feel another 6 months is appropriate.
I don't know about end of the year. How about by June?
Sorry, end of the fiscal year, I agree.
Fiscal year, sorry, I thought you meant calendar year.
No, I agree with
Okay.
you, Councilmember.
Okay, with regard to the ARPA FRF dashboard, how often is it updated?
It's updated on a weekly basis, is my understanding.
And I know that you were talking about the terminology encumbering. For example, some of the grant programs, agricultural, relief for nonprofits, funeral assistance, they don't show that anything has been encumbered yet. Is it encumbered after the funds are distributed?
After the funds are distributed, it should be expended. So if they're, I will go back with the team and take a look at each of those items and make sure that they're being updated properly.
And then when you say expended, do you mean just like, for example, the $30 million for nonprofits? Clearly, they haven't been expended yet because they probably haven't made a determination, so that would still be encumbered?
Correct. So once the money is out of city and county's hands, it's expended.
And when you say out, you mean all of it, right?
That's a good question. I do believe it's all of
$30
it.
million is a lot of money.
Right, I do believe it's all of it. I don't think we're incrementally showing the expenditure of that $30 million, but I can certainly check on that.
And I don't know if you might not be able to answer this question, but how is the nonprofit grant application going? And the reason I've heard from a lot of nonprofits, because you have stringent guidelines, a lot would not apply qualify because many of them received some COVID relief funding. So I'm just wondering, do you know if the applications coming in have been robust?
I don't have the exact numbers, but we did meet with DCS earlier this week. There have been a good number of applications coming in. We have the setup ready to review all of them. I appreciate your feedback that you've heard that it's maybe a bit.
Well, because I'm not going to mention some nonprofits, but some nonprofits worked really, really hard, and they were ineligible for this because they received funds, and they feel somehow that they're being penalized because they worked harder and they pivoted, and yet they still, your qualifications is net with regard to the revenues they received. So that was my comment. So there's a lot of nonprofits who weathered it, but they were still in need, and they just felt if there's a lot of nonprofits are not going to qualify, then they're waiting, because there's the need for also them to recoup some of their losses. So that's a comment, and I will follow up with the Department of Community Services.
I appreciate that. And if I may share, when we met with DCS, they did note that they had received somewhat similar feedback. So part of their approach is going to be to see how much goes out in this first wave of people who qualify, and then they can recalibrate and see if there's that room to have a second wave that maybe is not quite as.
That's good to hear, because $30 million is a lot of money.
It absolutely is.
And then lastly, I guess there appears to be nearly $2 million left over in funds not appropriate spent related to isolation and quarantine. Are those funds going to be reallocated?
Any funds that are not spent go back into whichever bucket they came from, and then they will be reallocated.
Okay. Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair Kiaina. Deputy Managing Director, thank you very much for those explanations. I know we keep referring to the discussion we had on Tuesday. So with that, I would like to ask if, you mentioned different buckets. So are we able to reprogram 33 million from this from the first tranche where millions do remain unencumbered and unexpended?
Thank you for that question. So out of that first tranche, we've already expended 38 million from that first tranche for this effort. So everything else in that first tranche, except for 5 million, that we're holding back for some emergency or some cost overruns on approved projects. That's all that's left in that. That's why we're seeking your approval to reprogram 33 million in the second tranche.
Thank you. And Deputy Managing Director, when you mean the different buckets, you mean the 4 goals listed here?
No, sorry, I should have been more precise. I meant the tranche 1 and tranche 2.
Okay, got it. So with that, I was wondering if the 33 million has to come from projects or priorities that are listed in Appendix A. Can they come from other, I guess, projects list or what have you?
So the 33 million, in response to the requirements of the bill, we offered potential projects from which they could come, but we didn't want to presume that that's what the council wants. So if the council has a different set of projects in tranche 2 that they think should be applied, that's the council's prerogative.
Okay, thank you. And may I just get clarification on, this is the last one, about the Tokai thing. Is that property acquired for affordable housing or was it for use of, I was kind of confused during that discussion. Would you be able to explain that?
Of course, it was
Thank you.
It was acquired for affordable housing.
Okay, and thank you. And you mentioned that we don't yet have a timeline for that at all.
No, we absolutely have a timeline for that one. That's the property where HPU is currently in there as a dorm space for their students. Their lease ends in May of this year. Since last year, DCS has been working with the affordable housing community to figure out how best to program those dorm spaces. So come June, July, August, we're ready to put people in there who need affordable housing.
Okay, and do you have any other physical spaces along with that former Tokai University location for affordable housing that we've acquired with these funds?
With FRF funds?
Or just anything in general?
So with FRF funds, we have not currently acquired any other affordable housing properties.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Shea.
Yes, Deputy MD, my first question is that I think we all should realize this is a one-time federal appropriation. Okay?
Yes, sir. You're absolutely right.
So the individuals or organizations who are applying for these funds have to realize that they cannot come back in 2024 to see that they have these funds available. And I personally feel we can't use the city's real property tax. That's number one. Number two, will you folks incorporate this 386 million into the next fiscal year's fiscal year budget? Because those that have gone through the first tranche have already completed with their particular grants. It's just like what I went through with PPP. I could not reapply again as a small business. So my concern is that I don't want to see more and more dependency on the county where we may not have the resources. So this morning's article, wow, shocked me that the revenues for the assessments came up to this, and this. You're giving the public, I personally feel, some false hope. And let's be honest, because these members had requested when I was budget chair position counts that was matched with real property tax, 50-50 federal, 50-50 city. Now we got to go and find that federal money resources to fulfill our obligation for those warm bodies that we need. That is a concern I have. I'm happy that we are going through this because last year was where we decided as a council to use a portion of the second tranche, which you folks were very, very amenable to it. So if you do follow up, I'm trying to anticipate by being honest with the council members here that, yeah, this is one time. And then the next question was, will some of this monies that we have in real property tax be incorporated into next year's budget? Those programs that have already exhausted their federal FRF funds, the first tranche.
Councilmember, thank you for that question. We certainly don't want to give false hope to the public, so you're absolutely right. These are a one-time source of funds. The first tranche is already out for the most part. There's 5 million left, so it will not be any part of the budget discussions. The second tranche, my understanding is that it was deliberately put into the CIP as it would last for 2 years. That was my understanding of the discussion and logic of it. But the council did put in this ability to reprogram so that the council would have the option of changing these priorities if it saw fit. I apologize, Councilmember.
Just one final thought. Maybe it's an error on my part in not sharing with the council members this past 2 years. I should have really pushed for just one-time appropriations and maybe focus more on the infrastructure area rather than the human being. The human being will continue, but infrastructure is a one-time cost that will help the county of Oahu. And that's where when we compete for the mighty dollar, Madam Chair, it's all going to be all of these different programs and departments. So I'm just trying to prepare myself in helping the administration and the council where we'll be by 2024.
So thank you, Councilmember Say. So none of these projects, with one exception, which I'll share, will have sort of a tail general funds impact. And the one exception is when we've used FRF funds in some cases to hire personnel. And so on that one item, we will be working with the Budget Committee Chair and the Budget Committee in terms of how we operationalize warm bodies who are funded with FRF, how we operationalize that into our regular budget.
Councilmember Okimoro.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Managing Director, and forgive me if I missed this number because there have been a lot of numbers thrown out today, but could you let me know, I wasn't sure if this was discussed, the $10.5 million encumbered funds for the Oahu Business Recovery Grant Program. Was that mentioned today? Could you explain what they have been used for?
Absolutely, Chair. And if I may go back to earlier in discussion with the Council Chair and Council Vice Chair, the Deputy Director for OER looked at the numbers. I made a mistake. It's 83.6, not 93. So I apologize. I should be more careful. Council Member, with your question about the Oahu Economic Recovery Program, the $10 million program?
10.5.
$10.5 million program. That was a program that we've been working on for quite a while. OER is in charge of that program. Is to provide money to businesses impacted by COVID. We just announced it this Monday, and so it's rolling out now as we speak, and they will be providing a briefing on the next agenda item on this program.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
Look forward to that. Thank you, Chair.
Chair Waters.
Thank you. Did I hear you correct that you said that changing priorities as the council sees fit is still available? We can still do that?
For tranche 2, yes, sir.
Oh, shucks. Because I was, as I mentioned earlier, you approved in tranche 1 $254 million, but only expended $79 million. So is it possible still the council to change priorities since there is a huge amount of money that still hasn't been encumbered or spent in the first tranche?
So, Chair, thank you for that question. You know, this was a very large discussion point last year. With respect to tranche 1, that money is moving. We're moving on those projects. So there isn't a room to reprogram those. Even
for what was talked about on Tuesday with the rental relief. You cannot reprogram some of the unexpended or unencumbered money from the first tranche to take care of what Director Asselby has been talking about.
So thank you for that question. So as I mentioned earlier, we did put in $38 million from that first tranche. So that's why we thought it appropriate to come to council for the remaining, the second $33 million. Whether we want to look at the projects that are already moving forward and determine that those need to stop, even though all the work that's been put into it, that's going to be an administration consideration discussion, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Chair Waters, would you like them to consider taking a $33 million out of tranche one?
Yes, I do think that should be considered. Also, since we're talking about it, the amount of money, if they're not going to do that, we should talk about how much money we should allocate out of the second tranche, whether or not it should be the entire 33 million or perhaps a lesser amount.
So
Okay.
if I may comment on that, Chair Kiana, with respect to the first tranche, there's an enormous amount of work that's been put into all of those projects already. So that's why we thought second tranche made sense, as those aren't quite as far along. But I appreciate your comment, Chair, about maybe a different dollar amount.
Well, that begs the question. Obviously, the second tranche was the city council's priorities, and you just said that not too much work has been done on the city council's priorities. Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying, Chair. Respectfully, an enormous amount of work has been done. They're not as far as long.
Okay, Councilmember Wire.
Just real quickly, apologies as the freshman. Thank you, Chair. In WMD, I'm just curious, so how does procurement apply? Was it waived, or it's still subject to 2 CFR 200 and all the other requirements?
So there was a first federal aid program, the CARES program. For that program, procurement was waived, and so getting the money out was a simpler process. For these monies, it's federal procurement on top of our own. So it is our own a regular process. BFS has, as I mentioned, put together a Tiger team that focuses on FRF projects because we want to get these done, but it's still the same challenges that we faced.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. We are going to proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
We will now proceed with remote testimony. If there's anyone standing by remotely, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, we have one remote testifier.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the Planning and Economy Committee.
I'm sorry.
My name is Gigi.
Yes. For the council members, I'm sorry, Gigi. I was going to recognize you. So Gigi Jean.
Sorry.
Please proceed.
Can we start over the timer? Thank you so much, Chair, for the introduction. My name is Chizhi Zhong, and I'm testifying on behalf of my Grassroots Cares. Thank you, Deputy, for the presentation. I'm not going to go into what he went into. I'm just going to paint like a national picture of the disbursement of funds just generally and what departments it went into for educational purposes. If anybody in the audience wants to know more, you will have to conduct your own research to find out more details. The American Rescue Plan Act, or the COVID stimulus package passed by the President and Congress, provides recovery relief for the economy and public health. $10 billion went to the Defense Production Act for personal protective equipment and medical gear for future public health emergencies. 13.48 billion was allocated to the Department of Veterans Affairs for healthcare programs. 7.6 billion went to community health centers for outreach and education. 500 million went to CDC for public health surveillance and analytics to modernize the U.S. disease warning system to predict emerging public health emergencies. And also within the CDC, 7.5 billion for vaccine distribution, administration, and etc.
Gigi, you're going to have to summarize. Your time has concluded.
Okay, I will conclude. And so we look forward to the impactful ways the American Rescue Plan Act package can support our city. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you so much. Members, we're going to move on. Thank you so much, Deputy Managing Director. We're going to be moving on to agenda item number 2, update on the programs and projects of the Office of Economic Revitalization. OER has played such an important role for the city during the COVID-19 pandemic, helping to communicate with businesses and constituents regarding the constantly changing COVID-19 restrictions, establishing brand new and oftentimes innovative and unique programs to provide relief to those impacted by COVID-19, including to local families and small businesses valued at over $300 million. Trying to collect data to understand constantly changing needs and continuous pivoting to try and best address those needs, and creating and strengthening partnerships with community organizations, state and federal agencies, and policymakers, all the while navigating federal, state, and county regulations and hurdles. I wanted to make sure that Executive Director Asselby and her team know that we see all the hard work and successes that the office achieved during these unprecedented times. As a result of the office's unique role in the city, they have been tasked with implementing or creating many innovative projects, such as grants for small businesses, agricultural grants, the Pacific Island Liaison Program, and COVID Funeral Assistance Program, the Regenerative Tourism Program, and the Businesses and Constituent Educator Program. As time goes on, decisions will need to be made on whether these programs should continue. And I thought this briefing would be a good opportunity for the Office of Economic Revitalization to share more about these programs, the status of these programs, as well as its successes and challenges. Thank you for being here, Executive Director.
Thank you for the opportunity to present a big chunk of the body of work of the new Office of Economic Revitalization. So thank you, Chair Kia-Ina, Vice Chair Cordero, Council Chair Waters, and council members. My name is Amy Asselby. I'm the director of the Office of Economic Revitalization. For the new council members, our office was myself and one other person when we were stood up in July of 2020. And the hope was to take what was a smaller Office of Economic Development and turn it into a more robust opportunity to do economic revitalization, and at that time respond very specifically to the pandemic. So I wanted to say most of our staff has been funded by CARES Act funding and now SLFRF funding. And we will be coming to the council with our plan for the long term to show not only are we piloting opportunities with community partners, practicing this work together, figuring out what our role is in coordination with the state, the other counties, community-based organizations, et cetera. But then we think there's opportunity for us to have sort of apprentice programs and other things that in the future will be able and more successful in receiving grants for from the federal government and other private support. And we hope to leverage any funding that we're receiving from the city today, and I'll talk about that a little bit in the presentation, with other private and public funds that are out there. That said, first slide. Or maybe not. Might need you to forward it, thanks. All right, so I wanted to share that everything we're doing is a part of a larger strategy, right? OER, we're the newest office, organized in the midst of COVID, and what we are intending to do is exactly this statement: planting the seeds for a post-COVID economy that is more environmentally sustainable, less reliant on tourism, more adaptable to emerging technologies, and better able to provide good jobs for our people. We call this work OER's Good Job Strategy. So I think it's appropriate to ask, what is a good job? And we're in the process of formulating that definition today. But I want to add that while we're in the process of lifting up the worker voice in terms of what is a good job, I encourage you to go to our website and check out our social media feed, because this is exactly what our team, our business constituent educators, and others are doing, which is helping us to define what the people of Oahu view to be a good job. But we're not kind of, out in the upper atmosphere on this work. I want to add that dozens of leaders in business, labor, workforce development, and policy have set forth an evidence-based, shared definition of job quality as a part of the Good Jobs Champions Group. And this is an initiative of the Aspen Institute and the Families and Workers Fund. So that's what I wanted to share today, this definition of a good job. First, a good job provides economic mobility. Good jobs give workers confidence that they can meet their basic needs, right? What are your basic needs? Healthy food, safe place to live, healthcare, and other essentials. Second, a good job provides economic mobility. There's a clear pathway into a good job, and there's an equitable chance at hiring, advancement, and to save and build wealth. Number 3, a good job gives a worker equity, respect, and a voice. Good jobs respect the contributions that people, right? We need people to execute all of the programs and the funding that we've been talking about today. And to do that without regard to gender, race, ethnicity, or level of educational attainment. Good jobs engage workers in understanding their work and contributing to the organization's ideals. Next slide. So this is our good job strategy. Pretty simple. Preserve good jobs, create good jobs, and help people to get a good job. Moving on. Our first strategy, preserve good jobs. This is where we get to talk about some of the programs that are on the agenda today. Oahu Business Recovery Grants, which was mentioned earlier in the discussion with Deputy Managing Director Jayaram. Oahu Business Recovery was announced on Monday with the mayor and the Chamber of Commerce. The program follows through on a commitment by the mayor to respond to those small businesses that told him they were just not eligible for other COVID relief programs. Sometimes it was because they didn't have a storefront, other times it's because the way they were incorporated, etc. Oahu Business Recovery Grants will provide $10 million in grants to businesses, as you can see, that endured a 25% or more revenue loss on an annual basis during the pandemic. Many of these eligible businesses will be those that were not privy to the city, state, or federal COVID relief previously. So they're going to be more likely to be home-based or events-based businesses, production, event planners, entertainers. We believe this program will help small businesses on Oahu to preserve good jobs. And I'd like to turn the mic over for a few slides right now to Deputy Director Kim Sparlin.
Good morning, Committee Chair Kia Aina, Vice Chair Cordero, Council Chair Waters, and the rest of the council members in the room. Really appreciate your time and your interest in our programs. We're really proud of the work that we do. And really the business and constituent educators are a core function of what we do, because these are the folks that are out in the community. Half of their time every week is spent out in the community talking with businesses and listening with intention. So how this supports our good job strategy is it focuses on growing Oahu's culture of entrepreneurship. 99% of our businesses are small businesses. It's our neighbors, it's our family members that just had a passion and wanted to start a business or had a skill that they wanted to take and bring into the community. Since this team was set up in 2020, they've met with over 3,000 businesses in the community, originally meeting to make sure that COVID protocols and COVID rules and restrictions, and then restrictions lifting were all understood. But we're pivoting to really make sure that we're getting information back to support, again, our entrepreneurial ecosystem here on Oahu. Again, they listen. They're out there to listen, and that's really a priority of our office, is talking to the people that we're trying to help. And listening to them and what their needs are, and then breaking down barriers, making sure that there's a common understanding, and sharing resources that are out in the community, or generating those resources, right, as you see. And thank you so much for your acknowledgement that we try to be on the front line of innovation. And if it's not being done, why not? And, how can we do it? And maybe not in the pure vision that we see, but at least in a partial vision, and then we go from there. We partner with the Small Business Administration and their support organizations like the Oahu Chambers of Commerce, and working organizations to offer webinars on a regular basis that are on our website. They're on our Facebook. They can be seen at any time for businesses or members of the community when it's convenient for them. They are sharing, obviously, the business recovery grant that is out on the street this week. The information's out on the street anyway. The application will be later this month. And then they're working to make sure that businesses understand new programs, new policies, such as the disposable foodware ordinance that went into effect in 2022, and what that impact is going to be on businesses. So we were able to take information back with environmental services and make sure that it's not really burdening our businesses beyond what they're already bearing. There is an outdoor dining pilot program that we're reaching out on, boots on the ground, talking with establishments and it's not just restaurants, but establishments that do have a food component and are permitted for that, that can now extend some of their sales onto city street sidewalks, pedestrian malls, etc., with this permit. And we're excited for that. They've already reached out to 86 businesses and focused really on the businesses that had taken advantage of this program under the COVID rules. And then we'll be reaching out to more beyond that as well. It's a little time consuming, so we're working on it and we'll get through it. A lot of the folks that they have talked to that did participate under the COVID program are intending to apply, and to date we've had 8 businesses that have taken advantage of it. Little bit of paperwork, some of them little bit of insurance issues, so they got to go and come back, and we're working through some of that. But that's what these pilots are about, is those learning lessons, and we're happy to come back when we have more information. I think within a year, and then in the 27th month, we have to come back and provide a report. And then obviously the sinkhole has been a big issue, and we've been reaching out around that, and so we appreciate the opportunity, to do this work. The outdoor dining pilot program, just for the new members' information, was Ordinance 2219. Oops, sorry, Amy had me there. 2219 that set this up. It's a 2-year pilot program. So this was signed back in July last year, and we launched it on October 10th. So I'm really proud to say that the departments came together, because OER is just a mouthpiece in sharing the information, but it's really the Department of Transportation Services that is responsible for this program, for the actual permitting of the food portion of it that goes onto the city sidewalks and pedestrian malls. Department of Planning and Permitting has the enforcement component to it. Liquor is also involved, and then we looped in the Department of Health to make sure that they were clear on what we were doing and weren't blindsided by anything. So we're really excited about the collaboration that has come together around this program. We did outreach. We did a webinar on October 7th to really let folks know that, hey, the applications are opening up in a few days. This is what you need to do. Like I said, we've done outreach to several businesses around this. It was in our newsletter that went out to over 10,000 individuals several times. It was amplified by our partners like the Hawaii Restaurant Association, the various chambers. We've done some, like Amy said, we're branching into social media, so we've got some YouTube and TikTok things that are going on around it that are pretty exciting. And again, just want to reiterate, we're happy to promote this, but it's not really our program. So, but we enjoy working with the team that are doing this. And lastly, I just want to talk about how the National League of Cities supports the work that we do. In September, the mayor signed into a commitment for cities of inclusive entrepreneurship. And in that commitment, we're able to participate in 2 cohorts. One of them kicked off this morning as far as the work part of it. The cohort itself kicked off in November, and then we've had some work in between. First cohort meeting was this morning, and then I have another one next week. But this is working with other cities to enhance our data systems. So what our economic entrepreneurial ecosystem organizations look like, and then what our data is, so that we're using our own data that we know and not relying on external forces for that. This work will inform the resource network that we're creating. And the vision of the resource network is a one-stop shop for businesses to find the information that they need to start up, to compete, and to thrive in the long term. So really to meet them where they are, when they are, and what their needs are. This kind of directory does not exist in the state of Hawaii today. And I'm happy to say that, again, in the spirit of collaboration, the discussions around this concept of a resource network, when we've had them with the State Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, has forged a partnership with the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation, and they're interested in utilizing this resource network to help small businesses with their HICAP program, which is the state's $62 million small business credit initiative. And so this will allow us to lead businesses into these loan programs, low interest loan programs. Creating this network of information for businesses will help the city and all of our small businesses create a culture of entrepreneurship on Oahu. Happy to answer any questions around that, but at this time I'll hand it back to Amy.
All right, so those were a couple programs that are about strategy number 1, preserving good jobs, right? Next, we're gonna move on to creating good jobs. Oh, it's backwards, forwards. All right, so thank you to Councilmember Kia Aina for proposing and for all the council members supporting the Agriculture Grants Program. We are really excited of this first phase of our long-term plan to help create a future where jobs in agriculture and food processing are possible, where more of the food on this island is grown, harvested, processed, and sold right here on Oahu, right? And these level 1 grants should help do that. They're pending. Our internal committee has reviewed and approved a little bit over 60 small farmers for these grants. We will be providing a total of $3,136,000 in up to $50,000 grants based on the applications that we received. This will help small farmers, ranchers, and growers on Oahu, those particularly affected by the pandemic and who are expanding production and creating sustainable agricultural jobs on this island. In November, we wanted to note that OER received about 127 applications for this program, and we really commended our team and the community partners who helped to do this because we translated and interpreted applications into Hawaiian, Samoan, Tongan, Ilocano, Lao, Thai, and Cantonese at the request of the community. We held 9 in-person application events with more than 12 different partners in the community, including some of the council members here. The Ulupono Initiative helped to fund some of that support, as well as Pacific Gateway Center, Hawaii Farm Bureau, and as I mentioned, 12 total partners. They really helped to bring the farmers in and to complete their applications. We were very pleased. This is kind of a benchmark for our office and maybe the city. We received our first completed application in the Hawaiian language. Later this year, the city anticipates offering more ag grants, including grants for large agriculture producers and grants to help build the food system infrastructure. This is, as I said, where we hope to leverage other private capital. And I've mentioned this before to the council. OER was a part of the Hawaii Investment Ready's Food Accelerator cohort. We were among 22 funders that worked with Hawaii Investment Ready, and we believe that all of that work builds momentum for this new diversified and sustainable ag vision for Oahu. My goodness, upside down. All right, I wanted to add, thank you to Council Chair Waters. There's $1 million in Tranche 2 for food access. So in addition to supporting farmers as they create these good jobs and strengthening the overall food system infrastructure, we are working to establish a food access program based on that $1 million in funding. As we dialogue with the community food providers, we wanted to share with you today that they have identified more than $12.6 million in need. So we're working with the administration on a future request to the City Council. So as you know, what's happening today is increasing Social Security payments due to those cost of living increases are pushing some of our kupuna off SNAP. In addition, we know that food costs are increasing, right? So today, unfortunately, our numbers of food insecure residents on this island remains the same as it was during the height of the pandemic. 1 in 4 kupuna and 1 in 4 keiki are food insecure. 1 in 6 adults are food insecure on this island. So we think that this was a really important add to the Tranche 2 funding, and we hope to be able to support the food bank and other partners, as I mentioned on here. Some of the proposals from the community include supporting the Bucks program, community food gardens, et cetera. So this has always been a priority, and I would like to make sure that you understand, whenever the city has provided funding for food access, it has been strictly and solely for local food. We are not providing money for food access for importing Cheerios, okay? It is all going straight back to our local farmers. My goodness, turn this the right way. All right. The Honolulu Accelerator is another program that was identified for the SLFRF. This accelerator program is the next phase of economic growth and good jobs, and we hope it will fuel startups to harness creative, innovative, and entrepreneurial thinking and talent on this island. Unfortunately, you may have heard that the pandemic has significantly impacted startups. In addition, the rising cost of interest rates has lowered their ability due to these type of financial constraints. The Honolulu Accelerator is a proposal for $2 million to help revitalize our economy by providing 2 years of financial assistance to business accelerator organizations. These business accelerators render technical assistance, counseling, and help increase financial capacity and other related services. We believe it could help approximately 150 minority-owned and disadvantaged startup small businesses. This program complements HTDC, the High Tech Development Corporation, as Kim mentioned. Those folks are within the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism at the state. And we've tried to make sure that what we're offering is different, but in partnership with their accelerator program. So they have an accelerator program that's on the street right now, which focuses on business growth, export, and manufacturing. And so we're focusing on businesses at the early end, right, the startup phase. Another area that was listed in the agenda today and is a part of OER's new and innovative work is in regenerative tourism. As you all know, COVID taught us the people of Oahu, they really want to see tourism better managed on this island and across the state. And for those that do rely on the hospitality sector for a job or for their livelihood, we want to make sure that the quality of jobs in this sector are improved with our partnership and include more opportunities for jobs, lifting up our special cultural, historical, and creative arts talent. That's where our focus is in terms of creating good jobs related to regenerative tourism and the hospitality sector. So OER has created a position for regenerative tourism. And this position helps to fulfill the mayor's vision. When I hear him talk about it, he said he believes the visitor industry must benefit our people and protect our place more than it subtracts from it. So the work of this regenerative tourism manager has so far focused on, first, forging an MOU with the Hawaii Tourism Authority so that we can have a more collaborative and different structure of a working relationship with them. In that partnership, we worked with them on the destination management action plans and came up with a community-based plan that identified 4 priority areas for the city to help in terms of the new type of tourism, right? Like, what will it look like? So number 1, you folks have considered and passed a short-term vacation rentals bill. The goal in the Destination Management Action Plan was to limit where those were and kind of better manage our tourists in particular sites around the island. Secondly, the plan identified increasing the visitors' use of public transportation. So there's a number of projects in that area that we're working on with CCSR, DTS, as well as the Oahu Visitors Bureau and HTA. Additionally, we need to better manage Oahu's hotspots, and that's a co-project with DPR as well as feedback from the visitor industry on everything from commercial permitting in our special places and our, maybe overly loved parks, beaches, and cultural sites. And then finally, a Buy Local campaign that is really about marketing the wonderful arts, crafts, as well as a focus right now on food and ag products. So a few of you participated with us on the initial outreach with the Good Food Pledge, Oahu Good Food Pledge. And now we are planning on February 7th, through the work of the Regenerative Tourism Program Manager, to bring the hospitality industry into that commitment to purchase more. Well, first to identify the baseline of what they're purchasing in terms of local food, and then to gradually increase over time their use of local food and local products in their businesses. Okay. So that kind of summarizes where we are in terms of creating good jobs and the industries that we've had an opportunity to focus that expansion. And now I want to talk just about a couple more programs. I will wrap it up with helping people to get a good job. And the area that we were talking about earlier, again, is thanks to the council support of workforce development. So Council Chair Waters put in two different project codes into Tranche 2. One was to support green jobs, and another was to support the transition of hospitality workers into other more sustainable economic sectors in terms of their careers. So our primary program is called Oahu Back to Work, and it takes those two funds and provides $5 million in partnership with the University of Hawaii. This is our third iteration of Oahu Back to Work, and we're really trying to shift our emphasis this time, first, to jobs with salaries starting at $18 in wages or more. We know we need to provide more wraparound services to individuals who want to participate, whether it be childcare, transportation, just understanding the higher ed process. Definitely, we hope to get people involved in 10-week certifications so they can just upskill. But in the long run, there's a lot of folks on our island who will be introduced, hopefully, to our post-secondary education system on this island, as well as other private providers who would subcontract with the university. For example, Purple Maya has been offering Salesforce training. So we're looking at that, as well as other programs like a pre-apprenticeship program with the carpenters, et cetera. Through these classes and these additional focal areas, we hope to maximize opportunities for those individuals impacted by the pandemic, that they get new credentials or skill sets and a better job with the salary and benefits they need to sustain themselves. Our areas of focus, just to be clear, are what we believe to be more economic shock-proof sectors: education, healthcare, information technology, clean energy, creative industry, and first and foremost, our own priority, city employment. So strategically, we're going to continue to work along UH, the Chamber of Commerce, the Workforce Funders Collaborative, and the Department of Community Services Work Hawaii Division. We want to ensure that Oahu Back to Work complements other job training programs and maximizes the impact for our workers and our overall economy. Finally, the last slide, I promise. So this is kind of a summary of the work of our Pacific Islander liaison, as well as a program that she is working to stand up called the COFA Migrants Death Benefits Program. Helping people get a good job is grounded in equity, right? This is a pillar of our good job strategy. And unfortunately, most of us are very familiar that the Pacific Islander community bore far more of its fair share of health and economic impacts than other sectors of our island community. The Pacific Islander liaison position was created in 2020 in response to that unequal impact. And the goal of this position is to help address this inequity and work with Pacific Islander community leaders to create resiliency. The Pacific Islander Community Liaison primarily focuses, once again, on listening to the community. We want to be the most helpful government agency. That's what we remind our team all the time. But including those related to the Good Job strategy, the liaison has worked with, inside the city, the Department of Community Services American Job Center, HPD. We've worked with them to introduce what would a job in the Honolulu Police Department look like for someone of Pacific Islander ancestry. And that's been really fun, not only with adults, but also taking those opportunities down to the school level where they've done, or are planning, I should say, ride-alongs with some of our police officers. In addition, the Hawaii Department of Education has focused on a couple different job areas that we think are really good and needed supports from the Pacific Islander community. So we're excited about those job opportunities that seem to be a good fit, and I'll leave it at that. The liaison is now establishing the new $2 million COVID funeral assistance program for the citizens of the Compacts of Free Association nations. This program will mirror the FEMA funeral assistance program, and it provides COVID death benefits to this population that was excluded from eligibility. In sum, this additional assistance provides a more equitable opportunity for all the members of our community to thrive in a good job. And that's it. We are working with all of our partners. As I mentioned, we want to bend Oahu's economy away from the 20th century and toward a more promising, regenerative, and emerging economy. In the near future, we see more of Oahu's people settling into new jobs with better pay and possibilities, sharing their experiences with family and friends, starting new enterprises, and creating new jobs. Thank you for listening. This is a very long presentation, I realize. There were 7 items on the agenda, so we tried to cover as much as possible. And if you have questions about the details or anything else, we welcome those now.
Thank you so much, Director Asabai, for your presentation. Members, one of the reasons I wanted to be in detail, and she actually went beyond that and talked about other programs, is because this is a new office. And as she mentioned earlier, most of the funds are from I'm assuming both CARES and ARPA funds. And as a result, as we project, many other jobs across the administration are going to have to work with our annual budgetary process to get funded. And because we're more familiar with all of the other agencies, their mission and the duties, I think it's important for us, as they're trying to stand up, for us to better understand. And so that was the reason for this. So you know all of the good work they're doing, but if you have any questions, which I have questions about specific programs, I wanted you to have the opportunity. So I'm going to open it to questions before I go into my line of questioning. Yeah.
Thank you, Committee Chair and Chair. And mine is quick too. Thank you, Director Asabai. This is super exciting. I just had a quick question about the agricultural grants. I know you mentioned that there are 127 applications, about 60 small farms or farmers that got funds. So I was just curious if the remaining, additional ones were disqualified, or if you need additional monies for this program because there's still a need out there. Because I think there's definitely consensus that we want to move, food security forward and support local farmers and ranchers however we can.
Thank you for stating that. This is a whole new endeavor for the city and county of Honolulu, and so we're experimenting. And I'm excited to say that the Ulupono Initiative, the state, even the U.S. Department of Agriculture are interested in the methods that we used to reach Oahu's small farmers. Very interestingly, we had the opportunity to meet new people. There was a woman who was a liaison for 19 Cantonese-speaking farmers. Who knew, right? This is such a great opportunity to really explore and learn that has been provided from this SLFRF funding. But what it's also allowed us to do is to work with other partners. Because while the city is exploring this, our other partners, like the Ulupono Initiative, like the Farm Bureau, like the Oahu Ag and Resource Association, they've come to the table and have helped us to review these applicants on our review committee. And so what we're hoping that we can do is, for the solid applications that we weren't able to fund, we would like to ask our partners to take a look at some of them also. And so we're working out exactly how we might be able to do that. But we think the bigger ecosystem approach is also important too. There were larger farmers and ranchers and growers that were not eligible for this funding, so we'd like to provide an opportunity for them. And additionally, to make this work, a small farmer needs the infrastructure to support them. And that is why we felt it was so important and such a great opportunity to work with Hawaii Investment Ready's Food Accelerator cohort. There's a whole bunch of folks across the islands, and I'm sure many of you have come in contact with them, that are looking at food hubs, food marketing, refrigeration, food safety, and helping the small farmer to be able to use a food hub, their expertise, maybe even share a drone, some ag technology, where they wouldn't individually be able to support it. The city could be a part of a network to help build out that infrastructure. Because without it, a small farmer is just that. And they're never going to get the contract at the Foodland or the Whole Foods or with the DOE unless we have more aggregation support, more infrastructure support, and really lift them up to do what they love, which is hands in the soil and working hard in our places to keep them green.
I appreciate that. And then I'm wondering, given that these funds are temporary, if this includes like a long-term plan in terms of how the city can continue to invest. Sounds like that's kind of what you're saying, but.
Yes, and the ag team put a long list of other items that they wanted me to talk about towards that end, but I felt I was trying to stay targeted on the grants and the focus of the committee. So we would love to share that with you and all the other members as we can talk about our trajectory here. We definitely know and understand in terms of applications that team has already applied for, and one, for example, with food composting for the pilot in Chinatown, that the more we do in partnership and collectively with the city's funds we have, the better able we are to show that we have partnerships and we have the resources and the experience to get the federal grants, right? So that's what we hope to be able to demonstrate and leverage additional funds for our future plans.
Okay, I appreciate that. And yeah, I'd like to see that list too. Mahalo, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. I would like to say this to all of the committee members as well as the other members that are here, is that for anything on this list or just the overall operations of OER, please feel free to call them to your office. And if you would like the program manager there, I would recommend that you do it. And so that you can be more specific to your district and the needs of your district. And I would say to the OER leadership, I feel that outreach, because that's a lot of you do, should actually be with the individual members as well, because
we have a meeting. We already met with Councilmember Dos Santos Tam. We're meeting with Councilmember Wire this afternoon and Councilmember Okimoto on Tuesday.
Okay.
So we're trying to make our rounds, and we look forward to meeting with the other members prior to the budget hearings this year.
Sure. Yes, I was just going to say that. I'm going to talk at length a little bit about that at the end of this hearing, but in the new, the older members as well, because some of these positions, they have been around for more than a year. And so, but I'm going to talk further about that. I'm going to call on Chair Waters first.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the hard work that you folks do. And it sounds like you folks are tasked with doing a lot. My have more of a comment than a question. You know, when we talk about good jobs, we had a hearing with Chair Say last year with Department of Human Resources where the city has 3,000 vacancies. I would perhaps suggest when you're reaching out that we don't actually have to create the good jobs. We already have them. And perhaps part of your budget could be used to advertise out there. And I've been seeing it on social media and others that the city is putting it out there. At last night's Waikiki Neighborhood Board, well, 2 nights ago actually, the city's representative put it out there to the community, hey, look, apply for these jobs. But perhaps we could do that. And maybe your department can help them relook at the minimum qualifications and even the pay to raise the pay so that people working in the city can survive above 50% AMI. Because if you look at the pay for lots of city workers, including city council members, it's like 60% AMI. So it might be worthwhile. I know our former budget chair Say is probably saying, wait, we need all the money we can to pay the current collective bargaining, which I agree with. But at the same time, that's low-hanging fruit, right? 3,000 vacant positions that we could try to get filled, including police officers. You know, I noticed Maui County advertises all the time for police officers. We're not. But yet we have 300 police officers, uniformed police officer vacant positions. So just a suggestion there. And then looking at page 14 on your slide deck, regenerative tourism, increase visitor use of public transportation. You know, perhaps we should look at increasing the city's portion of the rental car tax so that it's so expensive to rent a car, you gotta use the public transportation. Just a thought. Also, Turo, you know, I saw in the news, the Turo rental cars, and of course it's entrepreneurship, which we want to support, but they're taking up all the parking spaces at the airport. So that's something maybe we can look at to better regulate Turo. Also, better manage Oahu hotspots. You know, we've had a couple of hearings in Waimanalo on the North Shore about tourists going to these beach parks, busloads of them, right? You know, citywide rules dealing with commercial activity at our beach parks. Like if your office, I know again, I started out with saying we're tasking you with a lot, but if you can help the Parks Department perhaps write these citywide rules that deal with commercial activity. And perhaps we should allow some commercial activity, but using a permit system. Yeah, like, you know, if you get 50 weddings in a week or 50 photographers coming to Waimanalo Beach Park, of course the community is going to hate it. But if it was well regulated, 2 or 3 a week would be okay. I don't think with an educational component, I think that would be okay. It does 2 things, right? It provides small businesses the opportunity to make money using city resources, and also they would pay a permit fee, right? So the city can generate some revenue. And perhaps that money could go back into the Parks Department who upkeeps the park, you know, something like that. The other thing is perhaps help them work on the permitting system to make it computerized and online. You know, you can go online to make a permit to camp. Why couldn't you make a permit to have wedding pictures? But then you pay for it, right? And then help us work with the legislature to allow us to charge. Right now, we're only allowed to charge, the city's only allowed to charge what it costs us to administer the program. Well, why couldn't we charge a little bit more to generate some revenue for the city? And again, use that back to clean up the park. And then, of course, enforcement of this is super important. And I'm not sure which city department is in charge of all these things that I just talked about. I mean, well, I kind of do know. We're asking the Parks Department to do it. But perhaps the Office of economic recovery can help out in that manner, because they're overburdened and overtaxed too. And I think this would be a perfect use of ARPA money. Yeah. But anyway, so good job, and thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you. I would just like to add that that is what we hope the regenerative tourism program manager can do, that they can leverage some of the funding that's out there in that industry to get them to contribute a little bit more to those areas, as I mentioned, whether it be hotspots, our cultural activities, our historical special sites, as well as our entertainers and our amazing creative industry. Those things are what make Hawaii a special place to visit. There's beaches all over the world, right? And so if we have an actual liaison or program manager with the industry, and we can figure out how do we establish this partnership, how do we leverage what the city does with what they're interested in seeing improved, right? The Waikiki Business District Improvement Association is an old example of that, because there was some need for services that the city was providing to be enhanced. And so the businesses in Waikiki contribute to the Waikiki Business District Improvement Association so that we have a partnership in terms of management of this special place, or this place where many of our tourists stay when they come to visit this island. And we think that that is the opportunity with this position and this opportunity that COVID created that allowed us to see what is this island like without hundreds of thousands of visitors on it. And how do things change, or what happens in our natural and cultural and other special places when there's not so many people visiting it? And so that was a revelation, I think, that resulted in many of the recommendations. I highly recommend taking a look at Oahu's Destination Management Action Plan, because a lot of the things you talked about there are discussed. Now the question is, how do we implement them? And again, I think where this person can work is in the policy and the partnerships to leverage some private funds to help the city in these areas that the industry feels is important to the visitor and what makes Hawaii a special place to visit.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. I just want to also plant the bug, which it may be in the tourism destination plan that you speak about, but Councilmember Cordero and I met with a software maker who is working with the county of Kauai, where they actually charge by the car. If you want to go to visit a beach park, you have a parking space, you go online, you make an appointment, and you can have an ambassador there wearing on kukui natlei saying, "Aloha, welcome, Ms. Asobe. You have parking stall number 4. You go online, you make an appointment, and you go there. That way you can limit the amount of people taking the hike to the pillbox, taking the hike up to the Cocoa Head Stairs, or anywhere other destination within our districts, right? By going online, making an appointment, and you go. I think even going to the road to Hana, right? Same thing. You got to go online. You got to make an appointment to even go drive down the road to Hana. Why aren't we doing that in Honolulu, right? I mean, and like you said, it may already be in that destination plan, but it really is putting it into action. And I got no problem reprogramming some of Tranche 2 if you guys are going to actually do it. You know what I mean? If you need the resources to get it done. I mean, that's what people want us to do, right? Get it done. And that, to me, that's how you can limit the amount of tourists you have at various spots. By making, I mean, it's technology. Everything's technology nowadays, right? You need an app to do it. So let's create the app right on your phone. Another, just a quick idea, Paul Brubaker came and spoke to us a couple of years ago talking about an application called geofencing, where if you go to any of our destinations, I'm pointing at Cherokee Aina, the pillbox. The pillbox is Lanikai is overrun with tourists. People parking all over Lanikai, which might help you solve your parking problem in Lanikai, right? You have a geofence. If you enter into that geofence area, bing, you will now automatically be charged $5, right? there's no reason why the city shouldn't be making money, right? The tourist companies are doing that. They're paying GET license or GET tax. They're not making, the city's not making any revenue off of this. So again, when we're talking about Office of Economic Recovery, think about stuff like that we can actually do. And I'm open, hopefully the budget chair will be too, and the budget committee open to perhaps reprogramming some of that first and or second tranche to fund things like that will have immediate benefits to our city coffers, as our budget chair and former budget chair always remind us of. Thank you.
A similar but not exact geofencing type program is something that we, the office of, the Mayor's Office of Culture and Arts, as well as the Oahu Visitors Bureau are working on, which is both a system of better cultural information in Waikiki, and as well, if you're on that map, so MOCA is working on making sure that we have the most appropriate information at these various places, but also the beacon, as a part of the increased visitors' use of public transportation, would let a person know if they're walking in a particular area that, oh, there's scooters over here if you'd like to take a scooter. The public bus is over here. It comes at this specific time. There's a beakie there if you'd rather take a beakie than jump in your rental car. So that geofencing type beacon system is being paid for by the Oahu Visitors Bureau, but we're working with them to implement it. And so those, I think, are the things that this program manager can do, which is bring the industry together with their funding, with our operations, and enhance our ability to do any number of things, as you mentioned today, et cetera. Yeah.
Councilmember Cordero?
Thank you, Chair Kiaina. Hi, Director Asabai. I just want to follow up on two programs, or one program first. You mentioned the compost pilot in Chinatown. Was that stood up by CARES or ARPA funding?
No, that was grant funding.
Oh, grant funding. Okay. Was just wondering if so, then how are we going to sustain that, as well as implement it in other communities? But I guess if not, but would you be able to highlight how that project is going?
Not today.
Okay.
I don't have an update for it on you, or for you.
Oh, okay, got it.
But we are staying in close touch, CCSR as well as the Department of Environmental Services. This is just a pilot for what a citywide food composting program might look like. And so we had to get willing participants, obviously. And that would be something that I can definitely provide you an update on in the future.
Thank you. And my next thing is, and my just second and last follow-up is, with the response for the COVID funeral assistance, and then working with the Pacific Island Liaison Program, are you planning to stand up any long-term program within either OER or any other administrative office to assist not just the Pacific Islanders, but those immigrant groups as well?
So the Office of Economic Revitalization has been home to a lot of ideas of other people. And because sometimes they don't fit at that point in time with another department, we've said, sure, let's do this. It's needed. We're happy to take on this work. As we continue to climb our way out of the both health and economic effects of the pandemic, we believe that this position might likely better fit in a different department. In the meantime, we continue to focus on the parts of that work that have to do with economic revitalization, and continue to have internal discussions with our city leadership about a better fit and the long-term strategy in terms of potentially the larger immigrant community being a focus of a work of this type of liaison.
Thank you for your response. I look forward to any further updates or discussions that we can have about that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Good questions, Councilman Cordero. I have shared similar concerns, just about the long-term sustainability and the actual need of a lot of underserved communities. I think we acknowledge that immediately after the pandemic, that specific population, especially because of the health impacts, warranted a specific position. But as we're evolving, I think it would be best to probably broaden that. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be contemplating that in the budget. Councilmember Okimoto?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I had wanted to follow up on the $10.5 million. I know that on your page 6, it has kind of a basic thing, the aid for small businesses that endured losses of 25% or more. But could you provide us with more specifics on, I'm guessing that because it's under the preserved good jobs, so this is a continuation of floating payroll or rent, but I wanted to know what exactly the funds have been used for and the types of businesses that have or will be benefiting from this. Is it retail, restaurants, et cetera? If you could explain that, kind of clarify that.
So the idea for this came about in September and October of 2021, when the mayor put out an executive order that required all in-person events to cease. And so there was a lot of pushback from community, from business owners who that was their entire business, right? And unfortunately, as I mentioned, because many of them are home-based or just they work remotely, they didn't have a storefront, and so they weren't eligible for the city's $173 million Small Business Relief and Recovery Fund. So that was the intention in the creation of this program, to help those businesses that haven't received other CARES Act or American Rescue Plan funds. So there's the PPP program, the SFOG program, the Restaurant Revitalization Program. Those were all federal SBA-run programs to help small business. The city had the Small Business Relief and Recovery Fund as well. The state had the Pivot program and a couple other business supports. When a business applies for this program, we are looking, the Chamber specifically of Commerce is running this program for us. They'll be looking at revenue loss. And to determine that revenue loss, they'll be looking at tax statements comparing 2020 revenue with 2019 and also 2021 revenue with 2019. So you would have to show a revenue loss. And I don't know, this is maybe too much information, but we are not requiring them to give us how they spent money, right? Previously, all relief programs for businesses were a cost-based reimbursement. So the business had to incur the cost, right? They had to have paid the rent, they had to have paid the salaries, or they would have had to have paid for masks or other things that they needed to do in their business to accommodate COVID requirements. In this program, we're simply looking at their tax statements to determine overall revenue loss. And then they are eligible for a certain amount of relief. So businesses are eligible, again, focusing on small businesses, from $75,000 in annual revenue up to $5 million. And the $5 million point is what we determined based on the Small Business Administration's definition of what size or what annual revenue is a small business. So only those businesses who make $5 million in annual revenues or less are eligible. And then we have tiered levels of grants, starting from $15,000 for the small businesses up to $50,000 for the, shall we say, larger small businesses. We think those businesses that will be able to qualify for this will be events and home-based type of businesses. Because if a business received CARES Act funding or other funding, that will have to be included in their documentation that they provide to us, which in some cases did help to make up for the losses that businesses endured. In other cases, where they weren't eligible because they were home-based, they didn't have a storefront, et cetera, they did not qualify, and they're more likely to be eligible for this program. So we're not trying to repeat what other federal relief programs did. We're trying hard, once again, to work towards equity, to get some relief and to get some support, even though it's past the date, that it was incurred, to these businesses that really had a hard time during the pandemic.
Thank you. And it's good to know because I wasn't aware that it is a shift from what the program was initially. So it's not, according to your information, it's not based on less than 20 employees. It's now solely the $75,000 or less than $5 million. That's what you're saying it's going to be based on. Okay. And so I had a question about, January 30th is coming up, and so 400 applicants will be accepted starting this date. What does the rollout look like now once they apply? Do you expect that all of the 400 will get it on the 30th?
So we had to do a lot of projections to come up with the $10 million figure in the first place. And then we did further projections to come up with the number of 400 businesses. So it's both to set expectations with businesses that you probably should get your application in as soon as possible, but also for our partners at the Chamber of Commerce to be able to respond and fund applications in a timely manner and not leave people waiting and wondering for when this funding may become available. So we hope to take the first 400. If they all come in at $15,000 for a grant, like eligibility, we should be able to reopen the application and allow more businesses to apply. If they all come in at $50,000, we will fund those again on a first come, first serve basis. Does that answer your question?
That does. No, thank you. And so I was just wondering, I do have another question after this, but is it possible to get a report after the grants are expended? Because it'd be interesting to see how the funds are rolled out, like you said, depending on which businesses apply and get accepted.
Yes, absolutely. Not only do we require, our partners at the Chamber to report to us so we can tell the feds what we spent this money on and that we spent it appropriately, but also this information helps us to understand and build our work going forward. We're going to learn some information about businesses on Oahu in terms of their revenue loss due to the pandemic, and we'll also get some information about the kind of struggles that they're still enduring. So we look forward to learning from this opportunity and also being able to provide this help at this time.
Thank you, Chair. I had one more question. This should be a quick one. I was really, you mentioned earlier how you guys get ideas thrown at you, which I think is neat. And out of necessity, your creative ideas and inventions are made. So I think this outdoor dining pilot program that the council previous to my being on it had started is a really great idea. I was just wondering what happens after, so you have 8 businesses right now, and they're on this 2-year pilot program. So after the 2 years, what happens? Do they get to extend and continue? And is there more of a demand for more than the 8 businesses outside of the ones that are currently a part of the program?
Yes, thank you for that question. Not to be blunt or flip, but that kind of depends on you guys. It's the information that we're going to bring back to give to you. There is a defined report at the 27-month, so we'll be back in a little over a year to give you that report. And then you decide, ultimately we implement, but we can decide together what that's gonna look like. I think we were a little disappointed initially at the outset because we had so many people, the Hawaii Restaurant Association said they had a bunch of people lined up and they were like, okay, we have 8, where are all these people? And what does that look like? And I think, human nature too. Okay, you try and then I'll go try later, right? And so there might be some of that going on, but we have boots on the ground. We've got folks in Chinatown today doing outdoor dining as well as the Oahu business recovery grants that are out there sharing that information. So we hope to see more of a pickup. We're doing a little bit of social media, trying to get out to some of these businesses as well of like, look how cool it is, But through that, we're also going to see revenue, right? So like to Amy's point, we're going to learn so much more about these businesses than just this dining pilot program. It could be that the businesses go, it's not even worth it. Some of them are like, I don't want to lug the furniture in and out every day, or I only get 3 square feet because there's a planter or there's a driveway or there's a bus stop. We're still sorting out how many are actually eligible for this. And we have to do that walking and being out there. And that's why it's a little bit time consuming. But to your point, it's exciting. I think it's something innovative. It's a pivot in the way that we've used taxpayer resources in the past. And it shows, kind of the growth of our community and that we want to do things a little bit differently. And we're going to try them out and we'll come back together and we'll decide really what's best using taxpayer assets, right? I think that's the other thing we have to balance a lot in these conversations.
Thank you. No, I'm interested to see how this program rolls out. Thank you. And I look forward to meeting with you, Director, next week in a few days. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Okimoto. We actually had that dialogue when the legislation was moving forward. So we authorized for the pilot, but well, speaking for myself, I already have expressed interest for more permanent, but it's still good to see the effectiveness of the program as well as the impacts on community because it's on the sidewalks, right? Thank you for that. So on the outdoor dining, if I could just get a list of the 8, because I'm assuming none is on the Windward side yet, correct?
Lanikai Brewing.
I don't know.
Was one of them. We're also working with a company.
Did they get it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's also a establishment, sorry, I feel like I'm screaming, called Over Easy that we're working with because there's just a little bit of uncertainty of whether they are technically on a city street because they're a little bit off of the street.
That's right around my neighborhood.
Okay, but you want this, right? So, those are the kind of things that we're learning through this pilot as well, right?
Okay.
And businesses are like, I don't know if I'm eligible or not. And so we're going out with tape measures and people and saying, no, you can do this here, you can do this there. And so, this is what a footprint of a chair looks like and that kind of fun stuff.
Okay, if I could get an update on
I'll get you a list
that
today.
would be helpful. My second question on the $10 million grant program, I just want to make sure, so these were for businesses that did not qualify for any type of COVID relief and fell in the cracks. So speaking about falling in the cracks, of course, our fishermen did. So are you outreaching to our fishermen?
Currently, we don't have any targeted outreach to the fishermen. That is also a part of our contractors' work in that they are the
Can you tell
executor.
your contractor? Because I'm afraid that they might forget, especially since the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if they're used to working with the smaller fishermen. And
Yes,
I do know
and
that
they would have to make at least $75,000 a year in annual revenue to qualify.
Okay, I just
We
want to
had
make sure. And then
yeah.
are farmers eligible?
No, farmers are not eligible for this grant program the way it was structured
How come? I got
because
asked
we
that.
have the other grant programs for them.
Yeah, but that's for grants, but that's for grants to help them. Was that also because they were economically impacted? I thought it was also to plus them up to increase their ability to thrive, our agricultural grants. Or was that type of like a relief as well?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Okay,
so
wait.
The business grants are for small businesses. I couldn't tell you today what the minutia is or the details are in the eligibility, but this is intended, again, for small businesses. And you made a point about if they had received other funding, they have to state that, right?
Yeah.
But keep in mind, if they receive that other funding and still have a 25% loss in revenue, they may still be able to receive the funding. And so the chamber, we had a webinar yesterday with the chamber that people can go view. If you want to encourage a business owner in your district to apply, they can go to the OER Facebook page and watch that half-an-hour video or any portion of it that they want to, which explains the program eligibility and directs them to further information. As well, tomorrow, we're posting the FAQs from that webinar. But that said, the chamber has been very explicit in saying, don't apply, just try. Submit the application, get the stuff together and apply. And so as Deputy Director Sparlin mentioned, today our team is out with the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in Chinatown, walking door to door. They have a couple people who speak languages other than English to help some of those businesses just even understand the flyer, right? So we're really trying hard to get to businesses that not the ones that had the accountant getting all this information ready in the first place, that know how to apply, that have the capacity to do it. We're working hard to get down to the businesses that haven't had an opportunity to get relief during the pandemic, and we want to provide this one last opportunity.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. On the Business and Constituent Educator Program, thank you for clarifying. Apart from identifying resources, I guess, I think just navigating challenges, including city regulations or any other regulation for that matter, state or federal, I think is so helpful for small businesses that are struggling. And of course, whatever evolves from Bill 57 regarding to on the concealed weapons, I think is going to be critically important on what the end product is to provide guidance for our businesses. So I just think that it's an important function of this program. And again, I'm going to save my latter question on the fiscal budget for last, but just with regard to measuring effectiveness of this program, what kind of outcomes are you hoping for to help show the program's success?
So we're securing a CRM tool, client relationship management, customer relationship management, depending on which actual tool you use, so that we can start to see the number of businesses that we're talking to, how long we're talking to them, how many times we're going back and doing the follow-up with them, how many unique businesses we're getting to in each month. And that's something that we're challenging the team with right now, is really to start tracking those so that we can have those measurements. As we start to build this resource network and we partner them with other organizations, we'll then start to see economic benefit. Right? That's what we expect to see. And we'll be able to then define it through the resource network. So we met with this business, we were able to put them in touch with Patsy Mink, that helped them go for SBA loan, to expand for, creative industries or whatever it is. And so that's going to be an iterative process to build those metrics as we start to move forward. And as we get more information, then we parse it out into more information and more information. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I just think that you have to go beyond touches.
Oh, for sure.
Yes,
but that's the quality.
It has to be quantifiable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The Director Asselby, as the City Council and the Federal Grants team, and I have to bring it up because I think it's going to, I need to know what the status is, because I feel that as we all, the City Council and the administration, looks at the expiration of these ARPA funds, as a city, we need to do a better job on securing competitive funds and grants. So what is the status of the federal grants team?
All right, I'm coming back on that one. That's been on my desk, and I have to say it's scoped out, and we're also working on getting an economic data strategist and an economic data specialist. Those are a few positions that we've just had a hard time recruiting people and paying city salaries, frankly, to Council Chair's point.
Well, the reason it's a priority for me is it's quantifiable, because you're going to know how much money is brought in, and I believe that we're losing tens of millions of dollars annually, especially from federal grants. And so if I had to choose, and these are going to be important questions when you come before us for the budget, because I just don't understand the reason that it's not being stood up.
Time in a day. There's just only so
Well,
many
I guess
hours.
I'm
Yep.
telling you that compared to all of the things that you've listed, I think it needs to be prioritized, because I don't look at it as just a priority for your office, but a priority for the administration, because that person's job or the team's job is to interface with everyone and have them do a better job in securing federal grants. So I just want to
Noted.
make sure that you guys don't forget about it. And lastly, are all of these programs, are you going to try to secure it as part of the fiscal 24 budget process?
So we've been working with the administration on a transition plan that did not bring it all in the first year, that will slowly transition some of the positions over. Some of that is based on what funding has been provided through the SLFRF committee. when the positions term out of their existing funding and starting to convert those over. Some of them are, as Amy said, we get a lot of things thrown at us that are just like, here's a great idea. Everybody else is busy. You guys do it. And test it, right? So we really feel like we're kind of that testing ground for some of these ideas before they become permanent positions and permanent programs within the city. So we're also looking at that of what makes sense. Regenerative tourism was one of those, frankly, that, was just stood up. We've got to get some proof in the pudding. We've got to get those metrics for you to show that it really does make a difference. Unfortunately, that was one of those that had a shorter funding period just based on the way that we were doing things when that position was set up. But in this next budget, we do expect to come forth with several positions. We're still negotiating within, our own pennies of what that's going to look like and how that's going to happen. And we do look forward to having those conversations soon because we know those budget briefings are coming soon. But to your point, it won't be all at once. We are going to stagger them.
Okay, thank you. And just, I guess, a recommendation on my part. I think apart from proof is just outreach, because you talk a lot about outreach. Outreach to me also includes city council members because we're impacted, right? And so I think regenerative tourism means a lot to my community. And so I just want to say that both with regard to your regenerative tourism program and your Pacific Island program, two programs which I'm clearly interested in, not one of those program managers has even set foot in my office. And I know that you guys always like to come, but I got to tell you, apart from the fact that I push for the agricultural grants, one of the reasons I feel more comfortable about that program is because I've interfaced with your program manager. So outreach means to me, not me having to call as part of this hearing or me having to call as a city council member. Outreach to me means look at all of the resources here that you have. And I guess I just want to say, set up a meeting. I've mentioned it before. I'd like a meeting with both of these program managers because both have been in their programs over a year. And I believe that we can provide a lot of guidance. So, just coming around during budgetary time to give me an update is not good enough. Again, I would like to see the program managers in my office so that we could get to know each other a little more. It will strengthen your hand. And I don't need to tell you that I would be your biggest advocate, right? And so I just want to say that. But I do say on the Pacific Island liaison for the budget that I would like to see that position broadened to be inclusive of all underserved communities. Members, any other questions? Councilmember See.
Yes, may I just thank Amy and Kim for a job well done. I read your monthly report that affects both Chair Waters and I as far as the outreach in the Kaimiki, Kapahulu, Kahala area, as far as the small businesses. And secondly, I'm happy that we have created this Office of Economic Revitalization. It gives me a personal satisfaction that now we can push the state to do more also. Because the OER is basically, for me, DBED. So thank you very much and keep up the great work that you folks are doing on behalf of the county of Oahu. One final parting thought. All that we're doing, Chair Kiaina, is just fattening the fund for the state. Businesses, they benefit from the general excise tax. Personal income, they benefit from the tax. I was trying to figure out a way, Amy and Kim, how can we, the county, because our number one revenue source is real property tax, that we don't get anything as far as what we're trying to do is providing more economic development. Yeah, when you have these new companies coming in, but if these are present companies, present farmers, they're paying very minimal real property tax, but when they make their profits, that goes to the state of Hawaii, and that's all I'm saying. And I hope they can understand that. Is it Mr. Sadayasu, the new director? Maybe we've got to go and see him too. But thank you very much and keep up the great work. And I know you have a very successful year. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? And Director, do you guys have any comments before I will check for remote testimony?
No further comments.
We will now proceed with remote testimony if there is any, no, we will now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
We will now proceed with remote testimony. If there's anyone standing by remotely, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, we have one remote testifier. We have Angela Young.
Angela Young, please proceed. We can't hear you. No, we still can't hear you, Angela.
How about now? How about now?
Yes. Yes.
Now?
Yes.
I was muted. Okay. So you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm testifying on behalf of my organization, CARES. We work with kids from impoverished communities in Kalihi, like KPT. My co-host recently presented at the city about KPT and the development. And, in regards to like economics, I wonder what opportunities will be provided for these communities. A lot of the communities like KPT is non-English speaking. I'm from another culture. They are immigrants. The character cycles of domestic abuse and trauma and suffer from health concerns. Crime and public safety are big concerns. A lot of them get into crime and a bad lifestyle. And a lot of them choose to continue to live that lifestyle because society standards for jobs are too high, and they need something easy to do, such as farming, planting, harvesting, cooking, sewing, weaving. Michael's talked about working with Kokua Valley to create a garden in the community. And
thank you so much. The good news is we had a robust discussion on the liaison office in the Office of Economic Revitalization. Councilmember Cordero, it's a priority for her as well as myself in looking to address some of the communities that you're talking about today. So thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again. Okay, aloha.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Alsovai and Deputy Director, for all the good work you guys have been doing. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.